What happened when an undercover CEO walked into his own tech store, only to discover that some customers were being quietly dismissed based on how they looked? Hello, brilliant listeners, you've got incredible taste for being here today. This isn't just a story about laptops and sales, it's about bias, courage, and what true leadership looks like when no one's watching. When CEO Marcus Ellison disguised himself as a regular customer, he uncovered a culture of silence and selective service. What he did next didn't just change one store, it sparked a movement. Stay with us, because this one's unforgettable. Marcus Ellison sat behind the wheel of a battered silver hybrid, its AC long broken and the dashboard sun-bleached from Arizona heat. Dust clung to the hem of his cargo pants, and a faded hoodie hung loosely over his shoulders. To anyone watching, he looked like a repair guy just coming off a shift, not the founder and CEO of NextFix Tech Hub, a growing chain of tech repair and resale stores across the Southwest. But today that was the point. A week earlier, his executive assistant Lillian had forwarded him 3 customer emails, each quietly describing subtle but consistent discrimination at one of his Tucson branches. All 3 complaints had something in common. The customers were Black or Latino, and all described being dismissed, ignored, or treated as second class. Marcus had built his company to be different, an accessible place for everyone, regardless of background or income level. The thought that his own staff might be replicating the same gatekeeping behavior he had once faced himself made his stomach turn. He'd come up through hard work, fixing motherboards in his parents' garage, hustling through school while taking night shifts, and he'd never forgotten what it felt like to be underestimated. That's why he decided not to send a regional manager, not to review footage, but to walk in himself, undetected, dressed down, and ready to observe. He pulled into the parking lot just after noon. The sun glared off the windows of the tech shop, its sleek logo flashing above the sliding glass doors. As he killed the engine, Marcus took a breath and glanced at his reflection in the cracked side mirror. Older now, gray at the temples, but eyes still sharp. He stepped out and adjusted the worn strap on his duffel bag. He wasn't here to play gotcha. He was here for the truth. If there was rot in his organization, he needed to see it with his own eyes. Walking toward the front entrance, he passed a woman pushing a stroller and a teenager texting by the bike rack. No one gave him a second glance, and that was exactly what he needed, because today, Marcus wasn't the boss. He was just another customer, one whose presence would reveal far more than anyone inside could imagine. As Marcus stepped through the sliding glass doors of the Tucson NextFix Tech Hub, the contrast in energy was immediate. The store had the clean, minimalist layout of a modern tech space, white shelving, glass counters, and LED-lit product displays. The air smelled faintly of ozone and plastic packaging. Near the refurbished laptop section, Marcus paused, waiting to be acknowledged. But no one looked up. A young white couple had entered seconds after him, dressed casually in golf polos and designer sunglasses. Instantly, Tyler Kwan, the store's charismatic sales lead, sprang into action. With a beaming smile and a polished pitch, he greeted them at the door. "Welcome to NextFix. Looking for anything in particular today? Can I offer you some chilled water while you browse?" His voice carried across the showroom like a retail commercial. The couple smiled and followed him toward the premium tablets. Meanwhile, Marcus remained invisible. He wandered near the discount tech station, rows of gently used laptops, tagged with QR codes and specs. Still, no one approached. Eventually, a tired voice mumbled from behind a nearby service counter. "Need something?" Marcus turned to see a man in his early 50s sit with thinning hair and a badge that read, "Rick Danner, Senior Tech Advisor." Rick didn't move from his stool, nor did he make eye contact. "Looking for a laptop," Marcus said evenly. Rick gestured vaguely. "Used stuff over there, prices are on the tags." That was it. No follow-up, no "what's your budget?" No "what will you be using it for?" Just a disinterested wave in the general direction Marcus was already standing in. From across the store, he could hear Tyler laughing with the couple, offering them a demo unit and a sleek financing brochure. Marcus kept his face neutral, but internally, he began connecting dots. The emails Lillian had forwarded were starting to feel a lot more real. This wasn't just inattentive service. It was selective enthusiasm. Marcus was getting the bare minimum, while others were getting the red carpet. He didn't need to be recognized to deserve fair treatment, and yet here he was, unacknowledged, unimportant, and on his own. First impressions, he thought grimly, were revealing more than words ever could. Marcus crouched beside a scratched but serviceable Lenovo ThinkPad with a clearance tag stuck to its corner. It looked like a solid machine, clean keyboard, decent specs, but he wanted to know more. He turned back to Rick Danner, who hadn't moved an inch from his perch behind the counter, fingers lazily scrolling through a tablet. "Can you tell me the RAM and battery health on this one?" Marcus asked. Rick sighed, clearly annoyed to be pulled away from whatever he was pretending to be focused on. "It's listed in the QR." "Should be, anyway." Marcus scanned the tag. No info. "It's not," he said patiently. "Can you check the back end?" Rick leaned back in his chair like Marcus had just asked him to rebuild the laptop from scratch. "I'll go see if I can find someone," he muttered, and without another word, trudged toward the back room. Marcus watched him disappear, then slowly turned to take in the rest of the store. Tyler was still with the couple, now laughing with them as they tested out Bluetooth headphones, offering tech comparisons like a personal concierge. He was engaged, polished, and enthusiastic. Marcus wondered what would have happened if he'd walked in wearing a button-up and carrying an iPad instead of a dusty duffel. Rick returned after several minutes, holding a crumpled paper spec sheet like it was a napkin he'd found under a desk. "Here," he said, dropping it on the counter. "It's got 8 gigs of RAM, battery was replaced last year. No idea how long it lasts now." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Any warranty?" Rick shrugged. 30 days, maybe. Depends on the model." The indifference wasn't just unprofessional, it was personal. Marcus wasn't being treated like a real customer. He wasn't even being treated like someone worth persuading. It was clear Rick had already made a judgment call based on Marcus's clothes, skin, or tone, or maybe all three. And this wasn't about Marcus's pride. It was about what this moment said to every other customer who didn't walk through the door looking affluent. He took the paper quietly and nodded, pretending to consider the purchase. In truth, he was already composing a note on his phone. Rick. 0 effort, no basic specs, no interest in customer needs. Marcus wasn't angry, he was documenting. Because what he was witnessing wasn't just a brush-off, it was the culture he was here to expose. While Rick wandered off again, this time to supposedly locate a power adapter, Marcus drifted to the corner of the showroom where the refurbished desktops were shelved. The air conditioning buzzed overhead, but the atmosphere felt oddly still, like a stage waiting for the next act. Then, the bell above the entrance gave a soft chime. Marcus glanced up. A young black man, no older than 20, stepped inside. He wore a faded hoodie, jeans, and held a slim folder tightly in his hands. Clearly a customer, maybe even someone applying for a financing option. He moved slowly, his eyes scanning the shelves with quiet hope, the way someone does when they've saved up for something important. Marcus watched from a distance, heart heavy with familiarity. He knew that walk, knew that hesitancy. Jamal Brooks, though, Marcus didn't know his name yet, stood near the entrance for a full minute. No one looked up, not Rick, not Tyler, not the receptionist at the desk. The couple Tyler had been helping were now sitting at a consultation table, sipping sparkling water and laughing. Jamal stepped a little closer to the counter, folder still clutched in front of him like a ticket. Still, no greeting, no offer of help, not even a nod. After a few seconds, he seemed to shrink into himself. He turned slowly and walked back out the door, head down, posture deflated, not in anger but in resignation, like it wasn't the first time. Marcus didn't move. He just stared at the now empty doorway, the ghost Jamal left behind still hanging in the room. The injustice wasn't loud, it was silent, practiced in routine. That was what made it dangerous. That was what made it easy to ignore if you weren't looking for it. But Marcus was. He opened his phone and added another line to his notes. Young black customer, no greeting, no service. Left unseen. This moment didn't need shouting or slurs to scream discrimination. It only took silence. That silence echoed through Marcus louder than any confrontation. Jamal's quiet exit had exposed something far more corrosive than bad customer service. It revealed a culture of passive exclusion. And now Marcus had seen it firsthand. He wouldn't forget. By the time Marcus returned from a short, uneventful test drive of the Lenovo ThinkPad, the store had settled into a lazy lull. The couple had wrapped up their purchase and left with smiles and a receipt. Rick barely looked up as Marcus approached the counter. "So?" he asked flatly. "Thinking about it?" Marcus nodded. "Yeah?" I'd like to move forward with it. Rick, clearly surprised, blinked twice before grabbing a clipboard and tapping at his screen like it was a burden. "You paying cash or financing?" he asked, eyes barely on the monitor. "Cash," Marcus said evenly. That got Rick's attention. His brow lifted, and for the first time he made actual eye contact. "Really? You sure?" The tone said everything. It wasn't surprise, it was skepticism. Marcus held the stare for a beat, then said, "Problem?" Rick paused. "No, just most folks in here don't pay cash for this kind of thing." Marcus leaned slightly on the counter, voice still calm. Maybe I'm not most folks." There was a long silence. Then, slowly, Marcus pulled the paper warranty Rick had given him earlier out of his pocket and laid it on the counter next to the laptop. "Before we move forward," he said, "can I ask you something?" Rick looked annoyed again. "What now?" Marcus gestured gently toward his clothes, the scuffed laptop, and the lackluster service. "If I walked in here in a blazer and khakis, do you think you'd be talking to me differently?" Rick froze, uncertain whether it was a joke, a trap, or something else entirely, but Marcus didn't wait for a reply. Instead, he stood straight, adjusted his hoodie slightly, and added, "Because you might want to rethink how you size people up." Rick muttered something unintelligible and turned back to his screen. And that was when Marcus decided it was time to stop watching and start revealing. He looked around the showroom, eyes scanning the employees who still hadn't realized who he was. "Actually," he said louder, drawing attention, "before we finish this I should probably introduce myself properly." Rick turned back with a frown. "I'm Marcus Ellison," he said. "I own this company." The room fell into stunned silence. What had been a lazy Tuesday afternoon instantly turned into a reckoning. And Marcus hadn't even raised his voice. The silence that followed Marcus's revelation was almost cinematic. Sharp, thick, and immediate. Rick's hand froze mid-keystroke. A few nearby employees peeked out from behind shelving displays, eyes wide, trying to process what they'd just heard. Marcus didn't rush to fill the quiet. He let the weight of his words settle into every corner of the showroom. Then he took a slow breath and said, "I came here today to see how customers were being treated when no one thought the boss was watching. And now I've seen enough." Rick opened his mouth, clearly scrambling for a recovery. "Mr. Ellison, I didn't mean anything by—" Marcus held up a hand. "It's not about what you meant, Rick. It's about what you did." "And what you didn't do?" He turned slightly to the rest of the store, projecting his voice. "I watched a young man walk in here, hopeful, folder in hand. Not one of you looked at him, not one of you spoke to him, and he left without a word. Do you know how many times that has to happen before someone stops trying altogether?" No one answered. The receptionist looked away. Tyler, the overzealous salesman from earlier, conveniently vanished into the break room. "I didn't build this company for showrooms to become gatekeeping zones," Marcus continued, his voice steady but charged. "We don't judge people by their shoes, or their hoodies, or how much they look like they can spend. At least we're not supposed to." Rick shifted uncomfortably, fumbling with the corner of a receipt printout. "Sir, if I came off rude, I apologize. Maybe I was just having a bad—" Marcus cut in, tone firmer now. "Rick, a bad day doesn't explain consistent bias. This isn't a fluke. I've got emails describing this exact behavior. I gave you a chance to prove them wrong today, and you proved them right." Another pause. Then, without drama or hesitation, Marcus added, "You're dismissed. Effective immediately." Rick's eyes widened. You're firing me?" "Yes," Marcus said plainly. "Because you don't know how to treat people with respect. That disqualifies you from working here." The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. The quiet gasp from a nearby technician said it all. For the first time all afternoon, Marcus didn't feel like a ghost in the room. He felt like a mirror, one that could no longer be ignored. As Rick stood frozen behind the counter, pale and stunned, the weight of Marcus's words rippled through the store like a shockwave. Employees who had been quietly watching from their corners now stepped into clearer view, some shamefaced, some defensive, all alert. A middle-aged customer browsing phone accessories stopped mid-reach. Even the receptionist's fingers hovered above her keyboard, unmoving. The air had shifted. And Marcus wasn't done. "This isn't just about Rick," he said, turning in a slow arc to address the entire room. "This is about culture, about how we treat people who walk in looking like I did today, like Jamal did. Some of you treat them like they don't belong, like their money's not real, like their time doesn't matter." He let the words settle, then added, "Let me be clear, the problem isn't that someone had a bad attitude. The problem is that we built an environment where that attitude could breathe and spread unchecked." From the back of the room, a voice piped up. Greg Saunders, a regular customer with a reputation for being opinionated and smug. All right, I get it. You're mad, but firing a guy just because your feelings got hurt? Come on, man. That's a bit much. Isn't it?" Marcus turned slowly to face him, his jaw tightening for the first time. "I didn't fire him because my feelings were hurt," he said, calm but with a steel core. "I fired him because he failed the basic requirement of this job. Respect. Respect for every single person who walks through those doors, no matter what they look like," Greg scoffed, arms crossed. "So what, now every time someone doesn't get the 5-star treatment, they cry racism?" Marcus stepped forward, eyes never leaving his. You don't get to define what discrimination looks like when you've never lived it, when you've never been followed around a store, when you've never had someone explain a contract to you like you can't read, when you've never been made to feel invisible just because you didn't fit a profile." The room was silent. Greg muttered something under his breath and walked out. No one stopped him. Marcus looked back at his team, his staff, his reflection. "This ends today," he said. "No more silence, no more excuses. This company doesn't just sell tech, it sells trust, and trust is something we rebuild from the ground up, starting now." The room remained suspended in silence, the kind that arrives when truth finally pierces comfort. Marcus stood at the center of it all, steady and resolute, when a voice rose from the edge of the service desk. Quiet at first, but unmistakably clear. "Mr. Ellison?" It was Priya Mehra, the inventory coordinator, who worked mostly behind the scenes. Her soft bun was slightly loose, and her hands fidgeted with the hem of her sleeves as she stepped forward. Marcus turned, his expression softening. "Yes, Priya," she took a breath. "I've been here for almost a year now, and I've seen things, subtle things. How some customers get passed off, how the tone shifts depending on who walks in, how folks like Jamal never even get approached." Her voice shook, not with fear but with the release of long-silenced truth. "I wanted to speak up. Once I even brought it up, quietly, to my manager. He told me to mind my pay grade, said it wasn't my place to comment on sales strategies, so I stopped talking." Marcus didn't interrupt. He just listened, eyes steady, arms crossed in quiet support. Priya looked around the room now, not just at him. "I think we all saw it. We just assumed someone else would say something." That admission cracked something open. The receptionist lowered her eyes, visibly affected. A repair tech near the back slowly nodded, like he too had noticed the culture shift, but hadn't known how or whether to speak up. "It wasn't supposed to be this way," Marcus said finally. "We started Next Fix to be an alternative to every store that made people feel like outsiders, not to become one of them." He looked back at Priya. "Thank you for saying what needed to be said." She nodded, a hint of relief passing over her face. Marcus turned back to the rest of the staff. "Accountability isn't about punishment. It's about responsibility, owning the culture we've allowed, and choosing to build something better in its place." For the first time all afternoon, the silence in the store felt different. Not fearful, but thoughtful. The kind of silence that comes when people realize they're standing on the edge of change. Marcus wasn't here to shame anyone. He was here to wake them up. And finally, they were starting to listen. Marcus didn't leave the store right away. Instead of heading to his old hybrid, he walked past it, out to the edge of the lot and across the sun-baked sidewalk. He scanned the street until his eyes landed on a familiar figure sitting beneath the bus stop canopy. Jamal Brooks. The young man was hunched over slightly, earbuds in, folder still clutched against his chest, looking down the road as if waiting for something that might never come. Marcus approached slowly, raising one hand in a gesture of peace. "Hey," he called gently. Jamal pulled out one earbud, cautious. "You were in the store earlier, right?" Marcus nodded. "I saw you, and I saw how you were treated, or rather, how you weren't." Jamal gave a half shrug, not bitter, just used to it. It happens. That quiet resignation stung Marcus more than any outburst would have. "I'm Marcus Ellison," he said. "I own Next Fix." Jamal's brows lifted, surprised but guarded. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," Marcus replied with a small smile. "And I'm not okay with what happened there. It's not who we are, or who we're supposed to be." He held up his phone. "Do you still need a laptop?" Jamal nodded slowly. "Come back inside with me. Not as a customer, as my guest. I want you to sit down with someone I trust, and we'll find you something that fits your needs and your budget. No runaround." Jamal hesitated, then gave a real nod, the kind that meant trust was beginning to form. They crossed the street side by side, and this time when they walked through the glass doors, the air in the showroom felt different. Respectful, alert. Priya was already waiting near the counter with a welcoming smile, and for the first time in a long time, Jamal wasn't invisible. As Jamal sat down with Priya, who greeted him like a valued guest rather than a transaction, Marcus stepped back and observed quietly from a distance. This was the moment he had been searching for, not just to confirm what was broken, but to witness what healing could look like. The change wasn't loud or dramatic. It was in the posture of the employees who now stood straighter, in the way eyes met instead of looking away, and in the silence that no longer felt avoidant but aware. Marcus turned toward the remaining staff and spoke with calm authority. "There will be a meeting tomorrow, mandatory. We're not just updating training manuals, we're redefining who we are." He looked toward Priya. "You've seen what needs fixing. I want you to help lead that change. Can you do that?" Her eyes widened, but then she nodded. "Steady, sure, yes, I can." Marcus smiled, his first genuine smile of the day. He didn't need applause. He didn't need validation. He needed action, and finally the wheels were turning. With the scene now in capable hands, Marcus quietly slipped out the front doors, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the parking lot. He climbed into his hybrid, but didn't start it right away. He sat for a moment, letting the breeze filter through the window, his phone buzzing with a message from Lillian. "Everything okay?" He typed back, "Not yet, but it will be." And for the first time in weeks, he meant it. Because this wasn't just about correcting one man's behavior, it was about restoring a culture. Marcus drove off slowly, not with the heaviness he came in with, but with purpose. Change had begun, and this time it wasn't just cosmetic, it was foundational, and it was long overdue. The story of Marcus Ellison's undercover visit to his own tech store teaches a powerful lesson about leadership, accountability, and the impact of silent discrimination. True leadership isn't just about managing profits or operations, it's about protecting values. Marcus didn't wait for a scandal to erupt. He acted when quiet complaints revealed a deeper issue, a culture of selective respect. The story shows that discrimination doesn't always shout, it often whispers through inaction, body language, and who gets greeted at the door. It reminds us that good service isn't just about smiling for some customers, it's about treating every person with equal dignity, regardless of how they look, dress, or speak. More importantly, the story highlights how change starts with awareness, but doesn't stop there. Marcus listened, observed, and then acted decisively. He not only held individuals accountable, but also committed to rebuilding a culture from within. By empowering voices like Priya and extending dignity to overlooked customers like Jamal, he proved that the path to equity is paved through everyday decisions. The real takeaway: silence allows bias to thrive. But integrity demands we speak up, even when it's uncomfortable. And when leaders lead with courage, the entire system can begin to heal.